Welcome to the Smart Business Revolution.
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 You want a revolution?
You say you want a revolution?
Revolution. The revolution.
It's going on right now.
Welcome to The Revolution, the Smart Business Revolution podcast, where we ask today's most successful entrepreneurs to share the tools and strategies they use to build relationships and connections to grow their revenue. Now, your host for The Revolution, John Corcoran.
All right. Hey, welcome everyone. John Corcoran here. I'm the host of this show, and you guys know my story, but I'm a recovering political hack, recovering lawyer, spent many years working in politics, including as a speechwriter with stints in the Clinton White House and for a California governor. White House has kind of been in the news these days. I don't know if you guys have tuned in at all. Spent years practicing law in Silicon Valley, much like my guest here, also former attorney, recovering attorney like myself. And 10 years ago, I discovered this medium, podcasting, which we're doing a live episode right now. And I've been doing it ever since. One of the best tools ever for connecting with smart people. Again, we have great conversations with top CEOs, founders, and entrepreneurs of all kinds of different companies. And today, I'm also the co-founder of Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses with the strategy and the production they need to create a podcast that produces tremendous ROI and connects them with their ideal prospects and referral partners. And before I introduce today's guest, I want to give a big shout out to Dr. Dustin Burleson. Go check out Burleson Seminars. They do some interesting stuff. And also Will Ventures, willventures.com, a VC firm out of Boston that invests in sports-related investments, which will come up in the course of this interview, because my guest today is Craig Weiss. He is the co-founder and CEO of Venture Club and Mouthguard Club. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's founded or co-founded half a dozen companies. During his 3.5 years as president and CEO of NJOY Inc., Craig generated over $150 million in revenue, raised $200 million in equity financing, and it actually got it from a $10 million pre-money valuation, reaching to over $1 billion valuation in 2014, recruited and scaled to 130 employees across a half a dozen different countries, manufactured and distributed over 80 million units of the company's products, and achieved distribution in over 130,000 locations worldwide, including Walmart and Walgreens. So he's got an amazing story, and we're going to dive into it here. As you know, this episode is brought to you by Rise 25, where we help B2B businesses to get clients, referrals, and strategic partnerships with done-for-you podcasts and content marketing. You can learn more at rise25media.com. All right, Craig. So you've got this great background in entrepreneurship, and then you and your buddy Blair, you guys have been friends for a long time, and you had talked about different business ideas over the years. I love this story. And finally had a chance to do a business together from an idea that Blair had, who had been a practicing orthodontist for many years. So tell us the story, how that came about.
Yeah, I mean, Blair and I have been, sort of best friends for almost 20 years. And he had really a front row seat for my crazy, NJOY story, which I had been a patent attorney for a decade. And then sort of much like that Kafka story, Metamorphosis, where the author wakes up one day and discovers that he's a cockroach. I sort of woke up one day and realized that I was an entrepreneur, and so I left behind the practice of law, and I had this crazy wild run of sort of running this company up to this unicorn status. And Blair, I used to always joke, was an entrepreneur trapped in the body of an orthodontist. He just had a great kind of mind for business. And so about, 5 or so years ago, he said, "Hey, listen, I want to run this idea by you." And I'm like, "Hey, sure, shoot." And he said, "Well, when you, he's like, look, I'm an orthodontist. When you finish getting your braces, or your Invisalign treatment, your teeth are perfectly straight." He said, the standard of care is you're supposed to wear a retainer when you sleep at night, for the rest of your life. And if you don't, your teeth are going to move. And it's just going to undo all this expensive, time-consuming orthodontic treatment. And so he said, well, look, as a practical matter, no one wears their retainer at night for the rest of their life. The thing gets old, they break it, they lose it, the dog eats it. And he said, so look, my idea is like Dollar Shave Club for retainers, Retainer Club. Brand new retainer shows up in the mail, you throw away the old one, you pop in the new one, like $99, once a year. And I go, wow, I think that's a great idea. And he's like, yeah, there's just no subscription model like in the whole field of orthodonture. And so we just started talking about it, and I started asking a few questions. And okay, well, how much does it cost? And it's like, oh, well, we've got these new technologies and 3D printing and 3D scanning, and the more questions I asked, the more I realized like this is like $100 million business. And so I start, making suggestions and asking questions. And he was like, look, I've had this idea for 2 years. I haven't done anything with it. Like, what do you say we partner 50-50? And I'm like, sold, let's do it.
Hmm.
So, I think when you go into business with your best friend, it's either going to be kind of spectacular or a catastrophe. I'm happy. I'm happy to report it's been quite spectacular, probably even better than I had hoped it would be.
Yeah, I have to
So
say, you guys still continue to get along really well. I see you banter with one another. And were you hesitant at first? Were you kind of like, I don't want to ruin a great relationship?
It's funny. I really don't remember being worried or nervous or scared or thinking like, ooh, I got some heebie-jeebies about it. Like, I think part of it is we've just known each other for so long. And I think we, knew each other so well. And also, we have a very similar kind of philosophy on life. We have a similar worldview. We have kind of a similar way of we have a tremendous amount of mutual respect for each other. That obviously helps. And I think we also, I mean, the other kind of key is we really, I don't want to say we stay in our lanes because that makes it sound like, like one of us says to the other, hey, I'm the expert here. It's not like that. It's more that I, he's the subject matter expert. The guy's a 20-year orthodontist. He's, was the team orthodontist for the Phoenix Suns and the Arizona Diamondbacks for 3 years. He's, member of the Academy of Sports Dentistry. And, he was for 8 years, an adjunct professor of, orthodontics. He really knows his stuff. And I love that. And I think that's great. And I think he looks at me and says, okay, here's a guy who built $1 billion consumer company and raised, a couple of $100 million in private equity. I don't think he needs me to tell him, how to raise money, and
Yeah.
so it's been a really great partnership.
In many ways, you are uniquely positioned to bring a lot of value to this business concept because of your background, and he is unique given his background to bring his expertise to this particular business idea.
Totally. No, the business wouldn't exist without the two of us together. And so it's been great. And there's just a tremendous, I worked with my oldest brother at NJOY I'd hired him as my general counsel. And, there's when you have that level of trust with somebody that I have with Blair, that I had with my oldest brother, Jeff, you can't replace that. It's just, that part's been fantastic.
Now, you wisely started it right before a global pandemic, so well done on that. But what I want to ask also about raising money, because I know you raised money early on in this pandemic. So in April, you closed a round of funding. What was that like a month into this global pandemic and raising money?
So I'm still kind of shocked that we pulled it off, and it taught me a lot of valuable lessons. So one was, I still remember saying to Blair, they say we're going to close. Like they say we're closing on like Monday. I'm like, I'll,
and he's thinking, wait, you're our money raising expert.
Right. I'm still kind of surprised by it. First of all, I give a tremendous amount of credit to Will Ventures, the VC themselves. They're young and super smart. Four former D1 athletes who all went to Harvard. The main founder, Isaiah, is just a superstar. And when I say superstar, I mean I hate to say things like that, but when I finish my short description of him, we're all going to feel a little worse about ourselves. But this is a guy who was pre-med at Harvard, got his MBA at Harvard, sandwiched between his 8 years in the NFL. Like, and when I first described him to Blair, his immediate response was underachiever. And this is a guy who grew up in such abject poverty that he was the subject of an Oprah Winfrey, like Emmy nominated show about overcoming poverty. So,
wow.
just a spectacular guy. So yes, I give them a lot of credit for not letting the pandemic change their level of in confidence and enthusiasm in what Blair and I were doing. And so, but also it goes to, something that, my mentor, Ellie Wortman, used to always say to me, which is, investors invest in one thing, which is growth. And you've got to have a growth story. It doesn't have to be a revenue growth story or a profitability growth story. It could be a customer acquisition growth story. It could be, a market penetration growth story. But you've got to have a growth story that can get people, excited. And I think we had one, and that was sort of the key to that raise.
And one of the interesting things about your business is it took me a little while to wrap my head around it because on the one hand, it's kind of got a simple idea, right? It's 3D printed retainers on a subscription model. Okay, that makes sense. But there's a couple of benefits to it. And it even took you guys a little while to kind of figure out those benefits and how to package it and sell it and who you should be selling it to and the most high leverage way of selling it. So talk a little bit about that and how you figured out a way to articulate and explain it, not just to investors investing in it, but also to the orthodontists that you partner with and the end consumer.
So, look, I'm really glad you asked the question because I found a couple of really interesting things about that. So first of all, we're still, 5 years in, we're still learning about our own business. And I would say our business model continues to evolve and it continues to change. And I often say to Blair, I learn more about our business every time I explain our business to someone else. Because as I'm trying to articulate or frame some aspect of our value proposition, like the light bulb goes off. And also I think, so look, ultimately we're kind of a B to B to C company on the Retainer Club side of the business, meaning, we can try to go direct to consumer and go out into the world and say, hey, still wearing your retainer, dog eat your retainer, do you ever have orthodontic treatment, $99 retainers. But the reality is there's like 12,000 orthodontists in the United States. The average orthodontist is completing about, call it 300 cases a year. And, it'd be a lot easier to partner with them. They're the gatekeepers of our target customer. And so really, in many ways, orthodontists are our customer because if we partner with them, then they say to their patients, every single day, someone comes into their office to complete, 2 years of orthodontic treatment. And they can say, congratulations, you completed treatment, your teeth look great. We recommend nightly retainer wear for life in order to make sure that you take the results of this incredible treatment and maintain them, with straight teeth for life. That's why we've partnered with Retainer Club. And, here's this iPad, sign up for Retainer Club today. It's a free initial trial. So the first set's, free and but you're going to want to continue the subscription going forward. So even aspects of what I just said was not how we started. In the beginning, we beta tested for a year with Blair's own patients, and he would just sell a $99 subscription at the end of treatment. And so then we said, okay, let's maybe do a free trial and make it kind of a no-brainer. And we're still having discussions about other ways to do the business. And that's on the Retainer Club side. There's still the Mouthguard Club side, which is really a totally different deal.
And that it's kind of similar product, right? Except that you can customize it and you can have team logos and things like that.
It's in some ways a very different business, even though the underlying technology is very similar, which is it's basically the 3D scanning, which is, when we were kids, the way that they figured out how to measure your teeth was with that horrible goo that
I remember
gag
that.
on.
Or you stick this mouth guard into boiling hot water
Yeah,
shake it
exactly.
off, and then stick this boiling hot device into your mouth and just clamp down on it.
Yeah, so it's funny. So both of those experiences, whether it's the goo that you gag on, which is like the worst experience that anybody's ever
Ugh,
had, like in
I
it.
never did the goo. I never did
Oh,
the goo.
the
Yeah.
goo is horrible, but the boil and bite, as it's called, is like the most ridiculous consumer fitting process ever. You take this boiling hot piece of plastic and like jam it into your teeth, and it doesn't even work, right? It doesn't
No.
actually even fit well afterwards. So now we've got this like incredible $30,000 basically non-invasive scanner that scans your teeth. And then we have this incredible high resolution 3D image of your teeth. And based on that scan, we can 3D print a model of your teeth and then make either retainers, if you want to wear retainers, or a mouth guard. And on the mouth guard side, which, look, there's 40 million mouth guards sold in the US every year. Anybody who plays contact sports should be wearing a mouth guard, but you're required to wear it for football and for hockey and lacrosse. And wrestling and a bunch of sports. And so, but what's cool is on the mouth guard side, unlike maybe a clear, retainer, we can trick them out. So you could do any color, any logo, any design, your jersey number, your name, whatever you want. It's kind of like the sky's the limit. And we've spent a lot of time developing what we think is like a super awesome mouth guard designer, which we just launched it like yesterday on our website. I think it's mouthguardclub.com/personalize. And, and it's just super cool. Like we think in particular kids, but even grown-ups will have a ton of fun kind of tricking out their mouth guard.
That's pretty cool. And so on the going back to the retainer club side, when you were first explaining the idea to orthodontists, did you find it was a challenge?
Yeah, there was definitely a challenge because there's a bunch of interesting challenges. First of all, part of having Blair as my business partner, it's so critical because he is our target customer. He is an orthodontist. He did this for 20 years. He knows his people and he knows their pain and he can relate to them and he understands them. And, one of the things that he said to me, it's how the business got started, is he said, look, there's this interesting dynamic, which is that dentists get like a lifelong relationship with their patients. And he says, as an orthodontist, I only get a 2-year relationship with my patient. He said, now it's actually a great 2 years. And if anything, it ends on a high note. Like people come in, their teeth are all crooked. And then 2 years later, they walk out the door with this incredible, beautiful smile. And they couldn't be happier. And he said, 95% of the time, though, I never see them again. And he said, and in the 5% of the time that I do see them again, it's not a wonderful relationship. Their teeth have moved. They're frustrated. They come back in. How come my teeth moved? And he goes, and then I go from basically being an orthodontist to like a private detective. Well, have you been wearing your retainer? Why didn't you call us? How come you didn't come in? And he said the relationship becomes really kind of adversarial. And he said, I just hate that. And so Retainer Club was really born out of that frustration of how can we sort of get out of that dynamic. But there was another issue too, which we learned over time, which is one of the smart people that I got to work with when I was at NJOY is a kind of a brilliant marketing guy. In fact, actually, if anyone watched Mad Men, he's like right out of Mad Men. He had his own creative marketing agency on Madison Avenue in New York. I mean, he really was like right out of Central Casting. And so we had this meeting with him in New York, and he took a look at our box that we ship our retainers in, and he said something that I just thought was so profound. When we live in a digital world and we do all of this digital advertising and you send emails and you send texts, and we all know what, the open rate of an email, advertisements, whatever, 2%, 3%, it's a low single digit number. And he starts looking at this box and he goes, you guys have a 100% open rate. Like everyone's going to open this thing. It's got their custom fitting retainer in it. And you start to think, what's the open rate on an Amazon package, right? It's probably pretty darn close to 100%. And so he started to realize like, okay, there's a great opportunity here for marketing. And so we started to promote to our partners the ability to market their services, like a refer a friend program or a teeth whitening program, inside our package that has this 100% open rate. And we didn't have that idea when we started the business. It was something that got developed over time as we've iterated. And we're pitching our orthodontists on, hey, we want to increase the lifetime value of your patients who currently only have 2 years and you never see them again. Now you can extend that out, really forever.
Right. That's brilliant. Yeah. Craig, this has been really interesting and insightful. Where can people go to learn more about you and learn more about Retainer Club, Mouthguard Club?
Sure. So retainerclub.com. And we've got partners now in, maybe a dozen or more states, closing in on 15 states. So check us out, and you can look at our little locator to see where you can go to get a scan that takes about 3 or 4 minutes. And then you're off to the races. And then mouthguardclub.com, where, like I said, we've got that kind of cool new designer, which you can play with and trick out your designs. Doesn't cost anything. And then if you want to order one, it's, we got your scan, and, again, you can do mouth guards or retainers. So that's probably the best place. And in terms of contact information, just, Craig at retainerclub.com or Craig at mouthguardclub.com.
All right, Craig. Thanks so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, John. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Smart Business Revolution podcast with John Corcoran. Find out more at smartbusinessrevolution.com. And while you're there, sign up for our email list and join the revolution.
Revolution.
And be listening for the next episode of the Smart Business Revolution podcast.